Three, two, one. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of season 3 of Vivid Voices podcast. This season, Echoes of Experience, is all about lessons, wisdom, and stories that shape us. So far in our podcast, we explored about the gift of diversity, the courage to change and understand, and the lesson that we all have from traveling. And in this episode, in Passing Down Knowledge Generational Lessons, we will dive into how different generations communicate, how they learn from each other, and pass down valuable wisdom. So let's start. And I would like to welcome our two amazing speakers who are going to share their thoughts and feelings today with us. Starting with Sunny. Good evening, Sunny.
Good evening, Hanan.
And we have Litera. Good evening, Litera.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. We are so glad to have both of you for today's episode. And I would like to start with the first question with our speaker, Sunny. So, Sunny, can you please introduce yourself to our listener? Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe share a lesson or a piece of advice that has been passed to you, whether from younger or older generation.
Thank you, Hanan. Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Intan, and it means diamond in Malay. My grandmother chose my name. Her name was Amas, meaning gold. Clearly, my family has high expectation. Growing up in a big family, we learn to value things because, well, there was never enough to go around. I am the eldest of 12 siblings. 12. That means a lot of hands me down and even more shared snacks. If you didn't eat fast, you didn't eat at all. It was the survival of the quickest. But the best part of growing up wasn't the chaos. It was the afternoons that I spent with my grandmother. Every day, like clockwork, me and her would gather around an old crackling radio to listen to Sandiwara Radio Brunei. It was a radio drama full of heroes, full of villains, and plot twists that left us hanging until the next episode. My grandmother was hooked. She'd gasp, laugh, and sometimes even scold the characters as if they could hear her. Watching her, I learned how powerful stories could be. They weren't just entertainment, they were lessons wrapped in drama. Through them, she taught me about courage, love, and resilience. She often says, life is like the Sandiwara. No matter how dark the chapter is, the story goes on. At that time, it sounded poetic. But years later, those words echoed in my mind when my own story took an unexpected turn. I spent nearly 2 decades chasing success. 17 years in IT and business consulting, followed by 3 years in talent management in oil and gas. It was fast-paced, high-pressured life. I was constantly solving problem, managing people, meeting deadline. I became the reliable elder sibling who always had it together until it didn't. Burnout crept in slowly, and then all at once. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. I felt lost. Despite my achievements, it was like the story I had worked so hard to write no longer making sense. I didn't know how to keep going. But life has a way of surprising me, surprising everyone. Just when I thought I was at my lowest, my younger sibling stepped in. Now, This generation, they live in a world I don't always understand. A world of TikTok dances, viral challenges, and positivity that seem unbreakable. At first, I didn't get it. What do they know about hardship? But they taught me something important. They showed me that life isn't just about surviving, it's about living. It's about finding joy even on hard days. To them, setbacks are temporary, challenges are meant to be shared, and laughter is the best way to get through anything. Now, the younger generation, my siblings, they live with a generosity of spirit that always amaze me. They don't hold back their kindness, their optimism, or their hope. They taught me it's okay, Kaintan. It's okay. It's okay to rest, to lean on others, and to find happiness even in smallest things. Their positivity was like a breath of fresh air. It reminded me of the heroes in those Sandiwara stories, always hopeful no matter how dark the chapter is. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Toastmasters, I realize that strength doesn't always come from hardship. Sometimes it comes from hope, from believing no matter how difficult today is, tomorrow can be better. My siblings taught me to see life differently, to live fully, to love freely, and to move forward no matter what. Blending my grandmother's wisdom with my siblings' optimism, I found myself through burnout. I learned that no matter how complicated life gets, the story goes on. Sometimes it's okay to change the narrative. This journey taught me the importance of bridging generation, carrying forward the wisdom of the past while embracing the future, the hope of the future. It made me realize that we are all part of a legacy. My grandmother's stories were her legacy to me. My resilience is my legacy to my siblings, and their optimism is the legacy they are creating for the future. As the author Desmond Tutu once said, we are made for togetherness, from family to exist in a delicate network of interdependence. It's through this connection, this sharing of stories and experiences that we go stronger and pass on our legacy. So, if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: life is like the Sandiwara. There will be heroes and villain, victories and setback. No matter how dark the chapter, the story goes on. And we have the power to make the next chapter better. That's the legacy we leave behind. Back to you, Hanan.
Wow, wow, Sunny, thank you very much for this sharing. And yeah, I agree with you. We are the one who write the next chapter in our life. Lecturer, what about you? Can you please introduce yourself to our listener and share with us some wisdom or a piece of advice that passed to you from different generation?
Well, thank you, Hanan. Hi there. My name is Lakshisha. I have been a speaker for a few episodes in this podcast already. So I won't introduce myself that much and get straight on to the question, but just know my name is Lakshisha and it's nice to meet you. Anyways, I don't think I can top Sunny's answer there because mine is more of a personal story and is more one-sided than a whole. But I'll try my best to keep up with you, Sunny. My advice or this advice was given to me actually by my grandmother. So what a coincidence that, grandparents, they just hold wisdom that none of us young adults or kids have until at a certain age. Now, this advice was given to me months before she had lost her memory and unfortunately passed away. It was more like a last wish turned to advice, actually. To give more context, I was barely 18. going through new beginnings in life as a young child or adult. I still consider child. Anyways, I had my first job, I had my first paycheck, and I just got accepted into college while I was taking care of her. My grandmother is like a second mother figure to me because growing up most of my life, I lived with my dad instead of my mom due to family complications, which I'm not going to press into right now. But bringing it back, my grandmother's advice seemed so simple and easy. It was to smile no matter what. I didn't know the deep implication behind her advice back then. I thought it was because frowning would cause wrinkles. And my grandmother has always been very mindful of her appearances. And I thought she would be mindful of mine as well. Being a girl, I have to be a proper lady. Am I right? So I thought it had something to do with that, but no, it was not. After going through difficult situations for a few years, gotten a little bit wiser, was then I realized how tough it was to really fulfill her wish. I don't have much to be smiling about right now. I'm constantly in the mercy of fear, regret, anger, anxiety, in that order, that I often forget to smile. Perhaps this is part of growing up, learning how to smile, that is, in a way, a genuine smile. Thinking back, the last time I had a smile on my face was effortlessly there. I just smiled because I want to. Was when I was 12. When everything seemed right until it wasn't, it still isn't, to be honest. Though her advice was vague, had plenty of implications behind it. And who knows what she really meant? No one can really ask her now because, you know, I think it's a great way for me to remember her by and somehow offers me a brief respite from everything I'm going through. And that is my story and my answer to your question, Hanan. I hope that was okay.
Thank you very much, Lucia, for you. And I hope you keep smiling no matter what. So back to you, Sunny. Sunny, it seemed for me that you have been grown up in a very big family with all this number of siblings and having people from different generation around you. So what do you think is the biggest gap when it's come to communication between different generation? You are muted, son.
Thank you, Hanan. What do I think are the biggest communications gap between generations today? There's a couple of things that I like to think of, but one of the biggest communication gaps that I feel that we need to bridge between generations today stems from the rapid evolution of technology and how it shapes our interactions. Older generation, like my grandma, grew up with face-to-face conversation, handwritten letters, physical things, and phone calls that required patience and planning because it wasn't cheap. Meanwhile, younger generation like my siblings are more accustomed to instant messaging, emojis, and short form videos where speed and brevity are valued. This shift has created a disconnect not just in the way that we communicate, but in how we interpret meaning. I think to bridge this gap, we need to find a balance between the efficiency of modern communications while preserving the depth and intentionality of traditional conversation. I think only when we do this, when we go slow to meet up halfway, just slow down, yeah, we can create meaningful connections that transcend generational boundaries. And that I feel with intention and meaning could help us really lessen the gap between the two generations. Back to you, Hanan.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Actually, this is with this I would like to go to one of our guests, maybe Trancy, to join us. Uh, I have a question for you, Trancy. Are you here? Hello, can you hear me? I have a question for our guest or our Toastmaster, Trancy Lee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
So
I'm
just
here.
now we heard Sunny's answering about the gap between generation in terms of communication. So I would like to ask you, how can different generation uh, not just understand each other, but they appreciate each other's value and experience?
To me, I think there are two things. One, the willingness to accept the differences. That's one. Because coming from different generations, of course, we have different point of views about everything in life. So first step is, if we are interested to understand one another, I think it's best. Number one is just be more willing to accept the differences. Then only you are more open to different views of each other. And then number two is I would say being more curious, because if you are not curious, then you would not even think about wanting to know the differences or the gaps between each other's generation. So I would like to urge or encourage all viewers here to have that habit of being a more curious person in life. Then we are able to learn more things. That's all I have to share. Thank you, Hanan.
Okay, thank you very much for your sharing, Trancy. Uh, Back to our speaker, Litera. I would like to ask you something. We usually, when we have communication between different generation, we have this argument. There's something that we agree and disagree, we like or dislike about others' attitude, behavior, or what they believe in. So, in your opinion, when should we simply accept a situation or behavior without trying to give a piece of advice or taking an action? And when we can create some change?
Okay, thank you for that question, Hanan. Pretty difficult to answer. Well, yes, today we live in a world where emotional expression is more visible than ever before. The younger generations are growing up in a time where vulnerability is encouraged, and mental health is openly discussed, and self-expression is celebrated. Um, hmm. But while the openness of younger generations is commendable, it also comes with challenges. The pressure to always perform emotional awareness can be overwhelming. Um, hmm. And in moments of conflict, emotional intelligence is tested more than ever. This is where the older generations play a crucial role, if I might say myself. You who have experienced life's up and downs, who have weathered storms and climbed through mountains, fought crocodiles, and maybe fly for once, have wisdom to offer, and the good news, the younger generations are willing to learn, but they also want to be understood. So how can we bridge this gap? First is by modeling emotional regulation, is the first thing that came to mind. It is a one thing to tell someone to stay calm in a tough moment, And then it is another to show them how, because when we handle stress, conflict, and disappointment with patience and self-awareness, we demonstrate what emotional intelligence looks like in action. And by validating these feelings without enabling reactivity, it's important to acknowledge the emotions, and it's about knowing how to express those feelings in the ways that leads to understanding and not division. So that's where I'm coming from. I hope that's easy to understand.
Yes, yes, thank you very much, Lashra. And with that, I would like also to ask you, can you share a time when you find the act of compassion help and strengthen the relationship between different generations?
Okay, well, give me a second. Well, the first thing that pops into my head was when I was very young and in rare occasions with my mother during the school holidays. I was in the grocery store, doing some shopping with her. And because this grocery store is big, it's more like a supermarket, to be honest with you. So all those high shelves, I could get lost very easily, especially for a child, right? So yes, I did get lost. I lost my mom somewhere. And of course, being alone, not knowing what to do, I cried, and I cried. Luckily, there's this one lady who showed some compassion to help me out. She's like, "Are you okay? Where's your mom? Would you like to follow us in the meantime while we help you find your mom?" Something like that. So that was a time where an act of compassion helped strengthen an intergenerational relationship with me. And well, to this day, I still remember, right? So that shows how impactful it can be with one simple act of kindness. Yeah.
Yes, it's simple, but it has a very strong impact. And I think all of us have this time in our life where we need the person from different generation to just show some compassion toward us, and the opposite actually. We also need to show this uh, emotion and understanding toward other generations. So I would like to share some stories with all of you, stories of people around me. It's a unique story. It's not something that we see usually. So because of some unpleasant event that happens around the world right now, I know number of families where the grandparents are raising up the grandchildren. So for some reason, the parents are not here. So those ladies and men who are in 60s and 70s, they are raising up generation, what they call them, alpha, Gen Alpha. So Gen baby born, so Gen Alpha in one house. So the situation is like that this old man need to think like a younger man and find a job and find an income. These kids, maybe by age 9, 10, they need to think of worry and taking care of the one who's taking care of them, which is their grandparents. It's a very complicated relationship. It's not something that we usually see. Um, so in your opinion, how such a relationship or how such situation when life put us in this situation, how can we have a healthy relationship between these two generations and try to minimize the effect of the big gaps that between us. So I would like to give my speaker time to think of the answer, and I would like to call our guest Adam Shin if you are here. Hopefully you are here. Adam? Adam
Hi,
Shin?
Hanan.
Hi
Yes, I'm
Adam,
here.
welcome our podcast. Did you hear my story?
Yes, I heard their stories. It's about grandparents raising grandchildren.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Taking the responsibility and raising up their children. So, and I think you understand how raising up a child is
Mm,
something need a big effort. So, in your opinion, how can these parents who are actually grandparents make this relationship healthy? Make sure their grandchildren are not affected by the gap between them.
mm. I think the question itself is we can't really control, when this happens. Like sometimes the grandparents had to take care of the grandchildren because, they lost their parents. There are also times in our Asian context, especially in Malaysia. I thought this happens quite often, especially in Kuching. For example, like I was busy with work, somebody were having work daytime, both parents are working, and you had to send your kids to your grandparents, I mean your parents. So it turns out that it's a more convenient options, I would say. That is when it happens. So the way I see it is when grandparents take care of their grandchildren, they tend to treat it like it's their own son or their own daughter. They had this regrets in the past, it could have been better somewhere, like with the way when they raised their children. So I think it imposed it that way to the grandchildren. They are raising the grandchildren like they're raising their own kid. And I see nothing wrong with it. But for this kind of case, I thought it would be great to set some grounds. Like if I'm the parents, if I were to send it to my mom or dad, or my mom to take care, or my parents-in-law, we should set some ground rules. For example, like no sweets. That's like a bad news for Yasmin in that case. Or there are certain rules that we can set. There are certain boundaries that I think we should set. We had to make it clear with our parents. So yeah, so we could raise the kid not exactly the way we want it, but it's in a direction. We call it a favorable decision. So I think there's nothing wrong with it. Eventually, the kids is going to turn out well. Like yes, Honey we were raised by the grandmother and the grandfather. So she grew up pretty well. Like me, I was fully taken care by my mom. Nothing wrong with it. Eventually, kids grow up, they tend to find their ways in life. So there are no perfect solution. There are no perfect formula for raising a kid. And things will flow naturally. That's my opinion. I hope that answered your question, Anan.
Yes, thank you very much, Adam. I like your perspective about that, how it's quite optimistic and positive perspective, and I like this. What about you, Sunny? Back to you, to our speaker. What about you? How do you feel about this situation?
My taking into consideration of my experience, my grandparents actually passed away when I was very young. Both part, I lost them when I was not yet a teenager. However, I could see it from the next generation, which is my parents looking after my nephews, uh, and also how my mom acted towards my younger siblings. I have about 20 years of gap between me and my younger sister. In a way, my younger sister could have been my my daughter and my mom would have been her grandmother. I can't help but look back and be very annoyed with my sister when she had the freedom to actually leave the house and come back well after midnight with no one knocking, waiting for her in front of the door. In fact, it was me standing in front of the door asking her where has she gone? Where is she from? She's not home by midnight. So so what happened is that I feel the gap between the generation is bridged by maturity and acceptance. I think, as mentioned by Terence previously, curiosity helps, empathy, listening to each other does help bridge the gap between the generation itself. But however, I have to admit, from my experience, it took me a long time to come to that point. So, to make things less, there's a lot of thought tonight, yeah. To make things less hairy and scary, what I've learned is before I react, to just slow down, breathe. You can attend a lot of breathing classes nowadays before you react. So that would be my advice to bridge the gaps between the different generations. Someone has to be the mature one to take a deep breath before they react. Back to you, Hanan.
Thank you very much, Sunny, for your sharing. May I call one of the other guest? Maybe I want a mother. Rosanna. Are you here, Rosanna Yunus? Rosanna, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yes, I have a question for you, Rosanna.
Okay.
Nowadays, with all this, so much of information that consume in short form contact, how can older generation encourage the younger one to engage in deeper, more reflective conversation? They are just sitting using TikTok and watching reels and sending short messages to each other. How can we encourage them to have this more deeper conversation?
I think having my own children, what's important is mirroring because, and of course, setting a good example. I think like Trisha used a good word when she said modeling because I myself is also caught up in my own device and so are my own children. And we allow it to an extent. We just switch off and engage digitally. But I guess like when I took away our daughter's device, she's always craving for something to do. Like, Mom, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do next? And then she will say to me, Don't look at your phone. Put your phone down. And then I would have to comply. And then I said, Well, what do you want to talk about? And then sometimes it depends, like, what's the depth of the conversation. We're not exactly speaking about things which, where's my son? We're not speaking about things which are totally complex, but probably simple conversations about, like, where does she envision herself? What's important to her? And what does she hope to gain if she does this and that? Something that we can relate to for her and for myself, because I think like those kind of questions are important as I was growing up, and it's nice to be able to hear her perspective now that I'm a mom and I'm a mom for my daughter. Take away that device.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you for your sharing. I would I would like to take this question and ask lecturer the same question. In your opinion, the younger generation, how can we encourage them to have more meaningful, reflective conversation with others?
Okay, so I think generally you just have to have a good connection with said child or younger generation. First of all, that's the most impactful, easiest way to, have a deeper, more reflective conversation, as you mentioned. Because if you do not have connection, say you're a parent, right? I think most of us here are parents, except for me. But having that strong relationship with your child actually really do helps a lot when it comes to parenting, I believe. And being a child myself of two someones, I wished that I had more connections with my parents. Because now that I have grown up a little, I can see the gap between me and my parents from not communicating that often. They're more focused on work, trying to provide for the family, or I am too occupied to secure my future. And of course, stressing over me, yelling at my ear from time to time. But you know how it is, parents. But yes, to basically answer your question, just build a connection, whether it will be taking patience from young to grown up, or you can start from when they're a bit older, where they can think for themselves, is when you actually try to build that connection. That's what I think.
That's good. Thank you, lecturer. I think emotional intelligence play very important roles when it's come to have a communication between different generation. Sometimes we may have arguments that very dramatic, but at the same time is very funny. I think we all have this conversation maybe with our aunts and mothers that they are very stuck to what they believe and what they want to do, but we see it like totally wrong. And we come out with a very funny and annoying situation, as I said. And here we need to apply some emotional intelligence step to move on through these situations. I would like to call our Toastmaster Honey if she is here, our timer. Maybe someone else at time here. Honey, are you here? Ah, Yasmin also is here.
Yes, I
It's
am
good
here
to
and I
have
can
both of
time at the
you.
same time. Thank you.
Okay, so my question for you is, what role do you think emotional intelligence play in how younger generation express themselves, and how can older generation nutrition these skills?
Hanan, if you don't mind, can you repeat that question?
Yes. So what role does emotional intelligence play in how younger generation express themselves, and how can the older generation improve or have this skill?
Now, I'm no expert, of course, but I do know communication will go a long way. I have a very poor relationship with my father. He's a very strict man. Now, when my brother can simply go home at 1 a.m. without being questioned of where he's been, how was he doing outside, or how did he even get home? I, the moment step out of the house, 30 minutes later will receive a phone call asking where am I, right? And when I was a lot younger, I despised that. I despised that a lot. And now that I have my own daughter, and I realized that the day the day my daughter was born, the first person who asked me, how am I doing, or the one who is hoping to delay all things is my dad, the person who I had terrible relationship with. Now, I realized that I wasn't understanding enough. So now that I seen him grow older and older, his hair turning wider and wider, because every year on Father's Day I will recycle the same photo that I like. I never really changed the photo that he is today, because he was a lot more handsome when he was younger. Um, but that's the thing. That I realized my dad gets older and older. That I understand that maybe he was just trying to protect me in his own perspective. I don't have a how to do so, but I do know that communication will go a long way. And I try to do that with my daughter too. I'm in it with Rosanna. Take that device away. I do give her TV from time to times, but the moment she get out of school, out of her daycare, I will not touch my phone. I will make sure my husband doesn't touch his phone either. And the first thing we'll ask, how was your day? What did you do? Who was your friend? Did you climb, enjoy yourself? And gave her the 101% attention as I wished I received a long time ago. So it's just generational differences, but I think communication will go a long way. In this time, it's that 101% type of communication. I hope that answers it, Hanan.
Yes, thank you very much, honey. So when we talk about the impact that we like to leave on other generation and the impact that other generation have on us, I would like to ask both of our speaker, what are the risks of losing generational wisdom? And how can we ensure the important lessons are passed down?
Shall I try?
Yes, Sunny? Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Hanan. So, the risk of losing generational wisdom. So, based on my sharing just now, listening to Sandiwara radio drama with my grandmother, I felt that losing her and losing that connection, I felt that I've lost the resilience, the cultural identity of the past, and also I think context. So I think to preserve this wisdom, we must create platforms such as this, such as Toastmasters, for storytelling and mentorship, to encourage more dialogues between the generations, and perhaps some or uh, document those experiences through writing, and in today's youth, via video, via TikTok, whatever platform they have right now. These valuable lessons that we've learned from our past. I remember I had a lunch with one of my colleague's father once. We were eating ambuyat, the local Bruneian dish, and he was sharing with me that in 1940s, when Brunei was under the Japanese occupation, we did not have rice. We did not even have ubi. What's ubi, guys? We didn't even have starch from potato. We only have the sap of a tree, and from the sap of the tree, we make it into a paste, a starch to eat. And I can't help but reflect that I don't have this experience of ever going hungry, and yet here I am sharing a seemingly patriotical dish, ambuyat or linut in Sabah, and it meant so much to the older generation, and feeling a bit sad that it's not the meaning behind the dish is so much more than a national dish. It's actually a representation of their resilience in the past, where you don't have rice or anything, in fact, to eat, just sap from a tree. So that legacy is missing, and I feel that we should do more of this sharing rate with video or be it in writing, so we can continue preserving and these valuable lessons continue to guide our future generations in resilience. Back to you, Hadan.
Thank you, Sunny. I agree with you. These stories should be documented actually, and we have plenty of platform actually. And I think the best way is to document these stories is to speak about it, to tell each other, at least to tell our children, and our children tell our grandchildren. Thank you very much for this, Sunny. Litra, what do you think? Same question for you.
Well, the goal ultimately is to pass down important lessons to the next generation and to the next, to create a legacy of infinite wisdom exclusively to your family. I'm kidding. Not exclusively to your family, but like, you know what I mean. I think in order to pass down lessons, you need to be genuine or at least sound like you are, right? When you want to pass down these lessons. When you talk to your children, don't make it seem like a burden or a chore. And definitely don't guilt trip them into it. It feels icky for the child. And as a child myself, once again, I cannot express how icky it felt. And it's to the point where whenever my parents were to try and give me advice, I would already say, just stop it. Like, please stop. I don't want to hear it. I already hear this 1,000 times over, right? So don't make it seem like also it's the only way, the right way to go about life. There are tons of different ways you can go about life. And I think advices should be taken into consideration and not literally. That is the responsibility of the child to understand the advice of their parents, teachers, or their model as well. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Litra. Yeah, it's a child's responsibility. Francis, did you hear my question? I would like to hear from you. What do you think about it?
Sorry, Hannah, can you repeat your question again?
Yes, sure. So, what are the risks of losing generational wisdom, and how can we ensure important lessons are passed down?
What are the risks, right?
Yeah, of losing generational wisdom.
I believe if we do lose our own generational wisdom, doesn't matter where it comes from, it's either from our grandparents, our parents, or even from our neighbors that we rarely see. If we lose those lessons, we would actually stop growing as a person. And that's what I feel. It would be a disaster for us human civilization here, because we all learn from history, and history is part of generational wisdom that has been passed down, documented, and in the form of a book, for example. And the risk that would happen would actually be us repeating back the disaster, the problems, the issues that has happened previously back in our ancestors' life. And I believe throughout all of our lives here, we all learn about history, and history is part of this wisdom that has been taught to us. And one of the ways that I would feel like it's important for us to learn and to have it passed down would actually be us playing a role, each and every one of us here, whether those that are listening right now, each and every one of us here plays a role in actually teaching back our next generation, our kids, our nephews, our niece, or perhaps our grandchildren here in the future about what we have learned, what we have gone through. Because little do they know that the things that we've gone through, it might seem minute, it might seem very, very simple to them when they are still young, but perhaps those things that we share to them etches back into their heart when they grow older and they realize that yes, Grandpappy said something that actually resonates to me. And that's what I feel. Do not stop communicating to our next generation. Do not ever stop sharing lessons, sharing stories, because these stories plays an impact to their lives. And that's what I feel is important in this conversation. And that's all from me. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Francis. I would like to add sharing and receiving and accepting. It's mutual communication. It's like as we share with with the younger generation, we need to receive and accept from the older one. Thank you very much, Francis. We are reaching to the end of our podcast. So I would like to give my last question to our speakers today, starting with Sunny. Sunny, if you could leave one message or a piece of wisdom for the future generations, what would it be?
Ooh, maybe just not once, yeah.
Okay.
From my sharing just now, I think from my grandmother, I learned that no matter how dark the chapter is, the story goes on. Her resilience became her legacy to me. For my siblings, I learned the strength doesn't always come from hardship. It comes from joy, generosity, and optimism. Gen Z, Gen Alpha's positivity is the legacy that they're building for the future. Life will always have its challenge, but how you choose to face them becomes your legacy. So, taking on Francis' advice just now, listen to the wisdom of the past, embrace the hope of the future, and remember that every setback is just another plot twist. Keep writing your stories with courage, kindness, and laughter. Keep on sharing those stories. And above all, stealing from Latricia, never underestimate the power of a smile. It may not prevent wrinkles, but it sure makes our journey, this journey, a lot more beautiful. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. I like how positive and optimistic you are. The story goes on. Thank you, Sunny. Our speaker, Litra, for you, if you could leave one message or a piece of wisdom for the future generation, what it would be?
I'm gonna speak in my Gen Z terms. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Find your you and keep doing you. Allow a few tweaks here and there, but ultimately just stay you because you are the authentic self. And nobody wants to be a copycat version of someone else. You want to build your legacy based on authenticity and pure, what do I say this? Pure skill, talent, and genuinity, right? So if you find someone in your way, just eliminate them. Literally. I'm kidding. Don't kill them. Find a way around it. You know, it's just an obstacle that all of us have will eventually go through. So just find a way around it, you know. There's always a way. That's it. If you understand it, then good for you. If you don't, it's fine.
Thank you very much, Litra. A very strong advice, I would say. Okay, so we reached to the end of our podcast. I really enjoy hearing all these stories. I think all our speakers today are very optimistic and positive. Also, the sharing from our guest. Thank you, Sunny, for sharing your experience with these different generations. Very interesting to know that you are 12 sibling. Literal, thank you very much for your sharing your thoughts and feelings. And by that, I would like to thank everyone, our guest, for joining our podcast, and see you in the next one.